Okay, folks, Michael J. here from the Whig Tory. How you guys doing? How you guys and gals doing? Hopefully everybody's staying safe. So, I don't know, we're going to have to call this Gaslighting America by Tucker Carlson. Now, we got Tucker Carlson front and center here now. So, we already did a show on Marjorie Taylor Greene, gaslighting the American people. Now we've got Tucker Carlson doing it. Oh, but you wouldn't believe the twist he puts on things here. You gotta watch this. This is just friggin' amazing. Unfriggin' believable. If you didn't witness it firsthand, you wouldn't believe it, folks. You gotta see this, baby. Here we go. Carlson, take it away, buddy.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight there was a lot going on.
Look at that smile. Look at that face.
So
what happened to the bow tie, buddy?
Very first day as president,
I can tie a
Joe
bow
Biden
tie.
ordered federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies to prepare a review of how the administration should fight terrorism. By last June, that report was complete. It concluded that after more than 20 years, Islamic terror is no longer the greatest threat to this country.
Okay, pay very close attention to this part right here.
Instead, the agencies declared that domestic political extremism is, quote, the most urgent terrorism threat the United States faces today. That's a very stark assessment. So you have to ask, who exactly are these terrorists who threaten us so urgently? And they're not...
Okay, good question, Tucker. You're finally getting to the root of the problem here, buddy. Okay, here's the problem as I see it. We've got certain media and certain politicians gaslighting America. And you're going to say, well, what do you mean, Michael? What do you mean? That's not true. Okay. Of course it's not true, you say. Well, let's look at something here right now. Let's put this in between Tucker and his major point of view he has to share to miss a line, promote a false narrative. I'm giving you a heads up here, folks. Okay, so now let's take a look at something here right now. So we're going to go back to my shared screen here. And you're going to watch this here. Okay. So now we have Haley Stevens, Democratic senator, and I've got an issue with this statement here. She's talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's right on about calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene, but her statement, I'm concerned about the mental health. She should not have put that out there. That's a mistake. But here's the important takeaway from this. And would like Capitol Police to address her dangerous threats in my workplace. Just as we would in any school or job site, we cannot let calls for gun violence go unchecked. So let's see what happens here in this video.
Violence go unchecked. Congresswoman Stevens filed the complaint after Marjorie Taylor Greene said this. Democrats, they hate...
Okay. Now look at this, and I did a video on this before, earlier. Democrats, they hate our Second Amendment. She's a Republican, and now she's speaking for Democrats. Come on, she's pointing a finger here. She can't take responsibility for her own actions, but she's pointing a finger. She's setting up the American people here. Democrats, they hate our Second Amendment because ultimately the truth is it's our Second Amendment rights. Yeah, you got Second Amendment rights, that's right. Our right to bear arms. That protects Americans and gives us the ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. Hold on a second. Folks, do you see something wrong with this statement? And I'll tell you exactly why I have great issue with this false narrative, because it is a false narrative. Now, she's saying the Democrats hate our Second Amendment. And then she said it's our Second Amendment rights to bear arms to give us the ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. Whoa. The founders initially put the Second Amendment in the Constitution because at that point in time in history, the British had made an attempt very similar to the insurrection by the supporters of Donald J. Trump of January 6, 2021. So the whole point of the Second Amendment was that the citizens could bear arms in order to fight an invading country, not a political opponent. This does not give you a right under the Constitution to fight a political opponent that is protected under the Constitution. Do you get my point here? Like, this girl's gaslighting America. So let's see what further happens here.
Our Second Amendment, because ultimately the truth is it's our Second Amendment rights, our right to bear arms that protects Americans and gives us the ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. And I hate to use this language, but Democrats, they're doing exactly what our founders talked about when they gave us the precious rights that we have.
Okay. So here, this is where it's really dangerous. This is not acceptable. And anybody that thinks it's acceptable, you really got to check yourself in, pal or girl. This is not acceptable because you do not like the viewpoints of the party that was duly elected You can do what here's what she's suggesting, and I'll repeat this. And I hate to use this language. No, she doesn't. She wants another insurrection. She's setting up for sedition again. It was bad enough January 6, 2021. You should be embarrassed by what happened there. And now she says, I hate to use this language, but Democrats, they're doing exactly what our founders talked about when they gave us the precious rights that we have. This is the biggest bullcrap lies story I've ever heard. And especially just after the 1-year anniversary of the January 6, 2021 insurrection. If you think that's Antifa or somebody else, you're kidding yourself. You had Peter Navarro go on national television, and he said 100 senators were going to do a Green Bay sweep. They were going to go against the Electoral College vote and the Constitution. And this is the party that's supposed to be a law and order party. Come on now. There's something seriously wrong here if you accept this kind of stuff. You should be voting these kind of people out. This is an embarrassment to your country. It causes you to be an embarrassment to the world. Back in Watergate, Barry Goldwater, a Republican of Congress, said to Richard Nixon, we are not going to accept that The people do not deserve that. And Nixon resigned because the Republicans in Congress at that time had a conscience. They understand their moral obligation to the people, and they acted appropriately. The Republican Party now, not like that. You need two parties. Your Constitution allows for a couple parties, and it doesn't say you can use the Second Amendments to commit sedition. It doesn't say that. So get the facts right. Now let's go back to Tucker Carlson, because this is where it gets even more embarrassing, and they've got a real problem here. A serious problem. If you can't see it, God help you, because you need forgiveness. You need to have love and peace in your heart, because this is dangerous. Okay, so let's go back to Carlson. Now let's see where he's going here now.
Not how you might expect. The report did not even mention the BLM riots, the deadly BLM riots that had just taken place. There wasn't a word about Antifa. There was nothing about the gunmen who murdered 800.
Okay, so here, this is the great diversion. The great diversion. So now he's going to pivot, point fingers at Antifa, Black Lives Matters. They're not the same situation, folks. Once people learn the truth, you'll understand. Let's hear what more he has to say. Continue the gaslighting there, Tucker.
Americans in the city of Chicago last year, many of them children. No, they weren't there. Instead, the Biden administration declared that the, quote, most lethal elements of today's domestic terror threat are political conservatives. They're people who disagree with Joe Biden. Now, that report was released almost exactly 6 months ago this Friday. It received relatively little attention and hasn't since. And no major news organization even asked the most obvious question. These terrorists who threaten us, where are they?
Okay, beautiful. You see how you're getting gaslit here, folks? You just don't get it. Holy moly. I better back him up. Just going to back him up so you can see it once again. You can see this for yourself. Holy smokes. You gotta see this.
That's a very stark assessment. So you have to ask, who exactly are these terrorists who threaten us so urgently? And they're not who you might expect. The report did not even mention the BLM riots, the deadly BLM riots that had just taken place. There wasn't a word about Antifa. There was nothing about the gunmen who murdered 800 Americans in the city.
Okay, so here he is, doing the old pivot, diverting. So let's back it up just a little bit here more. Back it up just a titch. Okay.
He's declared that domestic political extremism is, quote, the most urgent terrorism threat the United States faces today.
Okay, so this is what he's saying. This report says domestic political terrorism is the threat to America today. And then he's going to now pivot, and he's going to point a finger to, whoops.
That's a very stark assessment. So you have to ask, who exactly are these terrorists who threaten us so urgently? And they're not who you might expect. The report did not even mention the BLM riots, the deadly BLM riots that had just taken place. There wasn't a word about Antifa. There was nothing about the gunmen who murdered 800 Americans in the city of Chicago last year, many of them children. No, they weren't there.
What the heck was this? 800 children? Tucker, in Chicago? Come on, pal. What are you friggin' doing here? Man, oh man. You are dangerous. You are absolutely dangerous. And I'll tell you why he's dangerous. I'll tell you exactly. I already showed you. You don't get it. You really do not get it. It's all in front of you. Right in front of you. You don't get it. So look at here again. Let's go back here. So he says the report came back and it said homegrown political terrorism is the worst thing affecting America right now. And he says, oh, he pivots, Antifa, and some guy in Chicago and 800 kids. Like, you're buying into this crap? Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican from Georgia, right here, she's calling for people to bear arms. She says it's our Second Amendment rights to bear arms. Yeah, founders wanted you to have that right in case the British invaded you again. But no, Marjorie Taylor Greene is stating that, no, our political parties, they're the tyrannical government. Nothing about a tyrannical government in the Second Amendment rights. There's nothing in the Constitution, the Second Amendment rights, that says you can bear arms to take out a political opponent that is protected under the Constitution. Do you understand? I can't make it simpler than that.
From a tyrannical government.
Now,
and I hate to use
just
this
watch
language,
here.
but Democrats,
There you
they're
go.
exactly.
And here you go. So that report was correct because you've got a Republican senator that's saying that under the Second Amendment, you can take out Republicans' political opponents. Are you nuts? You're twisting the Second Amendment around like that, and you're going on the public record and telling people that 1 year after Trump incited a riot at the Capitol, an insurrection, committed sedition, and tried to pull off a coup. Peter Navarro, that worked for him, went on public television and said we're going to do a Green Bay sweep. And we had 100 senators on our side to subvert the right and the will of the public in order to put Republicans in power. Do you not see something wrong with this? You really have to look at this very, very closely, folks. You're missing out on something. You're missing out on a very important thing. You really don't get it. So, let's go back to Carlson.
The Biden administration declared that the, quote, most lethal elements of today's domestic terror threat are political conservatives, people who disagree with Joe Biden.
No, not people that disagree with Joe Biden. Tucker is putting friggin' words in people's mouths. He's gaslighting the general public. You just seen a perfect example of Marjorie Taylor Greene. You witnessed the January 6, 2021 insurrection. It's a moment of sedition. It's one of the worst things in American history that we've witnessed. Richard Nixon got called Watergate's not even close to what happened here with Trump and the Republicans. But Barry Goldwater, a Republican senator, stood up and said this will not be tolerated. But now you've got people acquiescing to this Donald J. Trump. and you really have to question where he's coming from. Anybody that is divisive, purposely puts fear in the hearts of Americans, instead of uniting and trying to be peaceful about how he does things, you have to understand, and question, who's that guy working for, himself or the American people? It's not the American people. He already proved that. So Tucker Carlson is gaslighting the American public. He's guilty, like Peter Navarro, of committing sedition and conspiring to keep this conspiracy going in order to pull off a coup in 2024.
Now, that report was released almost exactly 6 months ago this Friday.
Yeah.
It received relatively little attention and hasn't since. And no major news organization even asked the most...
Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention to you people. Holy smokes. You know, there's another important thing that you're missing. And I got to tell you, so in Arizona, Republican state, this has come out over the last couple of days, Republican state Representative Jake Hoffman signed a phony declaration in 2020 that Arizona electors voted for Trump. Even though the electorate count was in favor of Biden, he signed a phony declaration. And he got confronted on it. He actually signed. So this report's right. Political terrorism is an issue right there in the United States of America, and it's coming from the Republican Party. And you just don't get it. It's right in front of you. So just watch. This guy's confronted. He's already been found out to file a phony declaration, tried to subvert the vote in Arizona in favor of Trump, and it wasn't true.
When Bram wants to ask a real question, happy to have a conversation with him.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Oh, but actually, Richard Willis, I had a couple things. That being one of yourself as an elector. I'm asking you that question. One, to what authority did you find yourself as an elector?
So in unprecedented times, unprecedented action is occurred. There is no case law. There is no precedent that exists as to whether or not an election that is currently being litigated in the courts has due standing, which is why we felt it appropriate to provide Congress and the Vice President with dueling opinions.
Did you have direction from anybody?
He felt it appropriate to make his own decision to usurp the will of the people. And he claims there's no case law, and he acted upon it. As I said, Peter Navarro went on national television. 100 senators were behind us to do a Green Bay sweep to overturn the will of the people and oppress the Electoral College vote that was in favor of Biden and put it in favor of Donald Trump. He signed a phony declaration, and now he's justifying it by saying there was no case law to say he couldn't do it. But here's where it even gets more tricky. Watch this.
In doing this? Was it you, 11 yourself, doing this, or did someone give you advice on the manner in which you can do it?
So I was one of the electors, right? I'm not in charge of the electors, so you would need
How did you hear about it? How did you hear about it?
You would need to ask the
How
party
did you
chair
hear
that.
about it?
Okay, he's not in charge. You need to ask the party chair, but he's the guy that signed the phony declaration. Do you see something wrong with this, people? Now, that report was right. You've got a major problem, and it's the Republican Party that's the problem. You had the Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy. There's a committee inquisition to him. Asked him, who told you to remove the mail sorting machines and mail ballot and postal boxes for ballot drops? And he said, it wasn't me. They asked, well, who did? I don't know. Then they asked Louis DeJoy, are you going to put him back? He said no. Why would he say no if he doesn't know who gave the authority to do it, doesn't know the reason why it was done? It's all BS. It's all done to oppress the vote and overturn the will of the people and put the election in the hands of the minority. And you don't get it, and you're allowing that to happen. You're going to let your wife do that to your family? You're going to let your children do that to other children? You think that's appropriate behavior? Come on now. Now listen to this guy here a bit more now.
How did you hear about the plan? Were you just told to be somewhere?
You would need to ask the party chair that
Yeah,
question.
but you're the person who received the call. You showed up, right? How did you know to show up that day?
So as I said, you can go ahead and ask the party chair the logistics of it.
Ask her how you got a phone call to go somewhere?
You're welcome to talk to them about the
Do you
logistics.
not know how you arrived at a place?
Thank you. I appreciate your
Do
question.
you really not
Thank
know
so
how
much.
you got a call?
Have a great one.
The other question, I was hoping
When Bram wants to ask a real question, happy to have a conversation with him. Okay.
Okay. So people, do you not see how dangerous this is? You're being gaslit, and this Tucker Carlson is one of the worst offenders, and you're buying into this crap. It's nothing but lies, bold statements, have no merit whatsoever. And that report was correct. The most urgent terrorism threat to the USA today is political terrorism right within your own country, and you can't see it. You watched on national television, the whole world watched, aghast at seeing such a debacle. There was a platform right out front to hang Mike Pence, the vice president that stood by this Donald Trump, even when he was on national television telling people maybe bleach will take the virus out of you. You know, something seriously wrong. So let's see what Tucker Carlson's got to say here now.
Most obvious question. These terrorists who threaten us, where are they? If Trump voters are really the most, quote, lethal threat that our country...
I just showed you where it was, right there in the Republican Party. You just seen the evidence right there. He's gaslighting you, people. Tucker Carlson's part of the friggin' deep state. Donald Trump spent 4 years changing the people, putting people that are only loyal to him in place because he created his own deep state. He was creating the deep state, and he was telling you about it. Blaming somebody else for it, but he was creating it.
Country faces today, where are all the people they've killed? That's not an easy question to answer. Just look at the numbers, which are fairly tidily kept.
That's a dumb question there, Tucker. That's a stupid question. For a guy that's supposed to be so intelligent, that's a stupid question. Gaslighting. You even had Ted Cruz on TV a week ago. That was another embarrassment, another gaslighting of the American public. And Ted Cruz was kowtowing to you.
Take a look at all the Americans who died by violence over the past 12 months, and there are many thousands and thousands.
Okay, this is just an absolute embarrassment. So, you see for yourself now, folks. You've seen the evidence. It's time to wake up and do the appropriate thing. It's never too late to do the appropriate thing. It's time to wake up and do the appropriate thing. Love and peace. Take care. Michael J. All the best, folks. Be safe.